departure from consensus reality. That's all of fiction.
All right, let's
Sorry.
get going. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to another edition of Smudcast, where we have Dunn and Shiny with us today. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Going very well. Going very well.
Okay, we're covering a JustWrite video because why not? It's always fun to take a few shots of JustWrite, as smart as he is, and see what the heck he's talking about. It's fun, it's entertaining, and sometimes he gets stuff right, which is always nice.
To be big-brained is not necessarily to be smart.
It's kind of funny when you're a fan or something, and there's someone else who's also a fan of something, and you just don't agree at all. You just completely see the opposite ends of the spectrum or what have you. So it's nice to see the other side of the coin at times and see where's this guy coming from, because he's not wrong in some cases. His interpretation and his conclusions are way off. So we like to take a few shots, and not always physical, metaphorical ones, but actually alcohol, so we can walk through this thing.
Yeah.
Because we need it, and it's kind of strange at times. So if you don't know, this is about Rian Johnson's latest flick, which is Knives Out, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm a pretty big proponent of the mystery genre, so I can pretty much sit through this theoretically and understand where he's coming from. So Dunn did see the film, so he'll know what's going on mechanically, and we can talk about the concept of genre, which is a very big thing in storytelling, whether you're talking about John Truby's focus on genre or understanding a movie, what you go into a movie, why you read a book, why you read any story really, is genre. You are paying for expectations and elements and tropes and this and that. So how you switch genres throughout a film does not sound like a good film, because
you see, genre is subjective.
Really?
If a comedy doesn't make you laugh, then it's not a comedy.
Or if a drama makes you laugh, it is therefore not a drama, but
Soma
a comedy.
did not make me laugh. Soma did not scare me. Therefore, Soma is not a horror game.
Really? That's how it works? Okay. All right.
Well, according to who was that made that claim?
Joseph Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah, well. Let's talk to one of the other YouTubers that we love to talk about, which is JustWrite, and see if we can get this going. All right, it's only 7.5 minutes. Won't take too long, guys. So sit back, relax.
Enjoy the show.
Think very carefully and with as much detail as possible. Tell us what happened in that half hour.
At around the 30-minute mark of Knives Out, Detective Benoit Blanc flips a coin. It's also the moment the story flips genres. Let's take a step back for a second.
Okay, so as soon as you say or hear something like that, you've got a bad story. You've got a bad film. What you don't want to do is say, okay, the first half of my film or the first quarter or whatever is a mystery, and the next half is a romance or whatever.
The first half of my story is going to be hard science fiction, and then it's going to flip over to Lord of the Rings.
There's a huge problem, especially when you talk about mystery, that you suddenly have other elements from other genres, like a love story. That is almost a faux pas in the world of mystery, because mystery has like 20 set rules that were made like 100 years ago, and these were made to keep the story focused, to make the fiction of whodunit the main element. It's not to mean you can't imply romance or have elements of romance, because there's that element of romance in the one where Watson falls in love, but that's a side character with a side story, and you see the journey he goes on with this other woman, and it ends up being Mary, what's her name, and they end up having a relationship. So that's fine. You can do subplots, but the main thrust of the story is mystery in a mystery story. You cannot just have the detective fall in love or the detective do all this other romance bullshit, because that would degrade the quality of the scene, of the event, of discovering who done it. So the very notion that we're shifting genres automatically tells me this is a bad experience of a movie without even having seen it. If this is what actually happens, if this is what JustWrite is telling us Rian Johnson is doing. So I highly doubt that's what's happening. But anyway, Here's John Lemley. Thank you, sir. Subjectivity is, of course, subjective. Thank you for that tautology. That's always a helpful answer to defining words. What is A? A is A. Okay, let's keep going. That's great. All right.
The first act of the story makes us believe that we're about to watch a traditional Agatha Christie-style murder mystery. We have a confined setting, a large cast of colorful characters as suspects, and an ingenious sleuth here to solve the mystery. Visually, the house looks like the mansion from Clue, a movie that satirizes the tropes of the genre. And like Clue, the movie is signaling to us that it's going to take these familiar genre elements and make them as big and splashy as possible. We think we have a good handle on the kinds of twists the story will take, but then writer-director Rian Johnson throws a curveball that we're not expecting. He convinces us that we already know the answer to who killed Harlan Thrombey. An extended flashback tells us that it was his nurse with the morphine in the attic, but by accident. It's at this point that the movie ceases to be an Agatha Christie detective story and instead follows the story structure of a different genre, crime stories. Now, I know those sort of sound like the same genre, and yes, detective stories...
Okay, so there is the idea of the reverse crime story, like, what's his name? That detective on TV who went for like 10 seasons. You see the crime, and then you watch as he just asks a series of questions as a bumbling detective, eventually finding how to trick the criminal into giving up everything because he's so given it away. He's undefended the entire time. Columbo, there it is. That's the reverse crime story. So, fine. Doesn't work too well when you have a mystery story and you walk in and then all of a sudden it switches. That would be horrific. That would be like, hey, let's Agatha Christie, and then we find out who it is, and then what?
You could technically do that in a you do that in a TV show. Like Breaking Bad does this relatively well, where it is a detective story where Hank is trying to figure out, okay, who is this Heisenberg guy who's selling this crystal meth? And then
the thing is, though, with episodes, you can get away with it because episodes tend to be they become separated.
Yeah, it's harder to do that in a movie where you have a more finite amount of time. And I guess you could like have two sides of the coin where you like The Fugitive actually does this relatively well, but it's mostly like trying to figure out who did the crime while the doctor runs around trying to figure it out to try and prove his innocence. While Tommy Lee Jones tries to find him.
This is a great quote from the Laughing Cavalier, just because it sounds like something Rian Johnson might have done if he ever took an Agatha Christie mystery. Oh dear. And to be clear, the detective story and the crime story are synonyms. Yes, you could technically make them a genre or a parent genre, but when you say crime fiction or detective story or murder fiction or mystery novel or whatever, you're pretty much talking about the same thing, unless you're specifically referring to a style in, let's say, UK cinema or UK, what do you call those weekly shows, primetime shows?
Soap operas?
Soap operas have some elements of that. You can call them procedural dramas. Midsummer Murders is one that's been going on for a while. So there's all sorts of stories like that in UK, and UK is great at making these because they know the language very well. They're kind of corny, but you're really talking about the same thing unless you're specifying a style. So we have the police procedural in America, and then you have I guess you can call them the village procedural. I don't know what subgenre that is, but you're really talking about a style of introducing characters over the course of an hour or 40 minutes, depending on how long the show is. So there's synonyms. They're not necessarily subcategories. Punished Berserker, the only movie genre Rian Johnson knows how to write is Shisei? I don't know what that is.
I don't know. Scheiss.
Yeah, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. It looks like a German term.
It's like shyster.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
I would have said shite.
There's nothing wrong with changing your understanding of a through line. It's not abandoning it, and this is what JustWrite is implying, as if it's the whole thing changes. It's like, wait a second, no.
These are a subgenre of crime stories, but even though they have the same subject matter, we're going to think of them as different genres in this video because they differ on 2 points. They have different protagonists, and as a result, they have different story structures. In detective,
That's specific to each individual instance of a show. So again, Midsummer Murders is a procedural, but it has a very distinct UK style, whereas Law and Order is also procedural, but then it shifts to the law aspect at the halfway, or even sometimes even the quarter way through, because all the crime has been committed. We have all the evidence. It's all just one courtroom battle. But that's also typical in many other crime stories as well. So they're not, again, they're synonyms, and you can't see them as different genres. It's again, it's like Columbo. There's still a murder, there's still, we know who done it, but it's not about who done it. It's about how the detective figures it out and catches the criminal, which is the same in an actual crime story with Poirot. He still gets to catch the criminal at the end. Just different styles of getting there.
stories, the detective is obviously the protagonist, and we see the events from their perspective. There are 5 major beats that these stories hit. In Act 1, we meet all of the characters in a single location and learn a little about their backstories. Then at the break into Act 2, or sometimes at the midpoint, a murder is committed. Act 2 follows the detective as he investigates the crime until, at the break into Act 3, he has an epiphany and realizes who the culprit is. Then,
okay, so this is not always the case. You could say this happens a few times with Poirot, for example. He doesn't always have the scene where he has an epiphany. And if he does, sometimes it has nothing to do with anything. It's so obscure. Like, oh, the curtains were red. It's like, what does that mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything to us. So, yeah, you could say he has an epiphany. You could also say he has an epiphany at the start of the story where he discovers the murder weapon or what have you. So this is the whole point of those style of the Agatha Christie story is you don't know what's going on in Poirot's mind or Sherlock's mind because they're so up there in the clouds. We can't possibly understand where they're coming from. And sometimes when you hear the musings of Poirot, he's talking to himself and he's saying the most bizarre nonsense. Like it makes no sense. He's like, well, maybe if it was his daughter was actually the mother of this person, therefore, like he's trying to figure out every conceivable possibility before he eliminates it. And you're sitting there going, no one would ever, like no normal human would think this way. So just because he has an epiphany about whatever doesn't mean that's the formula. You could have no epiphany. It wouldn't matter. We don't need to know the inner workings of the detective's mind, nor should we. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you want to follow this as a structure, I guess you can apply it. That's fine. I don't mind.
Kind of like
for
how
the entirety of Act 3.
Sorry?
Oh, kind of like how you have Sherlock Holmes being the main focus, but Watson is the main character that we see the Sherlock through.
You mean the protagonist?
Yeah, that's the narrator. That's true. That's fine. I mean, that's just a style of narration as opposed to the beats of the story, I guess. But I guess he's looking at Agatha Christie novels, but even that doesn't even happen with Miss Marple. That doesn't happen with Tommy and Tuppence. That doesn't happen with her stage plays. You know, we love the explanation because that's where all the wonderful reveal gets happened, where he not just attacks the criminal, he attacks everyone. And everything, all the dirty laundry comes out. That's great. But that doesn't come after necessarily an epiphany. So people are asking me about the new Death on the Nile trailer.
I think that says it all right there.
Yeah, what's his name? Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, his interpretation of Poirot is just, and this is natural. Every time there's an Agatha Christie story, they get all these big names to come out because it's such a classic. It's such a big deal. You're like, oh God, who they got? Gal Gadot. Oh God, why? Like all these other names. You're like, I don't care. I really don't. It looks ridiculous. It's all glitzy. I eventually saw about 80% of the Orient Express film. It was just stupid. I just did not like it.
He explains in detail how the crime was committed and who is responsible. This formula has been done so many times, and audiences have become so familiar with it that the murder mystery detective genre is anything but mysterious.
I really hate that reference, but okay. The mystery genre is anything but mysterious. Like, no. Red Wesley, hello, sir. Thank you. I really love locked room mysteries, so do I. The kind that invites the audience to guess the killer and the method of crime, but I rarely see them done in movies and TV. Any suggestions? I think there was only one or two in, I think it was The Death of Roger Ackroyd for Poirot, where the whole crime was committed during a locked room when I think Flight of the Valkyries was playing, or some classical music where there was big clashes of the cymbal to hide gunshots or what have you. So they're hard to find because they're so technical. There's a few in Sherlock, I believe. It's been a while since I've read it, but they're definitely there, and they always focus on there's the classic one of the first films, or sorry, the first stories by Edgar Allan Poe. That's pretty Auguste C. Dupin. That's very, very famous. So read Edgar Allan Poe's. There's only I think 10 or 11 of those stories anyway. So read one of those. I can't remember the name. But yeah, they're always based off something technical, like some gadget that allows you to lock the door or open the window, or like gas or something like that. So it's always very magical, or the idea of an engineer creating a contraption to solve that or do that, or it's someone hiding in there. Like the murder was committed already, and they plant the body here to make it look like it happened inside. But yeah, definitely read Sherlock. I think with Roger Ackroyd in Agatha Christie, and one of the Auguste C. Dupin stories from Edgar Allan Poe. I believe. Oh, here we go. That's so Skaven. Smug, can you see the future a while ago? You went on EFAP and made a joke. People would do news about Alien Lives Matter, the black aliens from Aliens. That was years ago. I honestly don't remember what jokes I made. I did make a joke about Rose being the Asian woman crashing into the black man because Asian women can't drive. And Rags was laughing at that. That's the only joke I remember. So sorry.
Yeah.
If you can quote me, I'd be happy to understand what you're talking about and give you some information there.
Yeah, honestly, I think that Rian Johnson is just secretly a racist. He just realized I'm really terrible stereotypes.
The thing is, with progressive, with social justice these days, they often make something so progressive it actually becomes racist at some point. I think that's what it is more than anything.
Like the black guy is the janitor and the Hispanic man is the drug dealer.
I don't mind using stereotypes in stories.
I didn't even think about that. Him being a spice runner.
A spice runner.
Yeah, Jenny Nicholson actually brought it up in her review of Rise of Skywalker, where he's like, and of course the Hispanic man is a drug dealer. That's really racist. And that's the first time I heard it, and I'm just like,
I don't even think J.J. Abrams was thinking about that, but that is quite hilarious.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, they're secretly racist. They preach all this progressivism, but they're just secretly like racist. And they just can't do it.
Right. Let's keep on going.
A crime story, on the other hand, is different because it is not a mystery. In one of his lectures, John Truby, the writer of The Anatomy of Story, makes the distinction between the two genres as such.
So I talked about this reference. Now, he said, he's the author of Anatomy of Story, but this is one of his lectures. And I couldn't find which lecture because I don't know where he performed his talks 10 years ago. And I could give you the quote, and he's gonna reference him. Let's just get to that right now.
Makes the distinction between the two genres as such. Crime is a broad category of stories that puts less emphasis on detection and more emphasis on the battle between the criminal and the lawman.
Okay, so this is just a point of contention for me because I had to do some research here, and he's paraphrasing. He's not, but he put it in quotes. That's what's pissing me off. Let me just go to that. I hate to do this, guys, because I know you want to see the video, but
Well, we're
okay, so
making good
here's
time through it. We're making good time through it, I have to say.
yeah. So this is 2009. This is when he wrote this. Here's the actual quote. So crime, The Usual Suspects, No Country for Old Men, is a genre that places less emphasis on detecting the criminal and more on the cat and mouse beats of catching him. This pushes crime toward the action genre and means that the opponent is best when he is some form of master criminal. That's the quote. Okay? And I'm assuming this is from a lecture. This is from a blog post from 2009. So he's talking about genre and how to sell to your base, which is a business idea. Anyway, let's get back to this. I gotta watch another.
I don't wanna get left behind.
Get ad block.
Gotta move, gotta move,
Yeah, I should probably. Huh?
It's time to move on. That's actually a very good. That's actually very good.
In a single location. At the break into Act 3, this formula has been done is different because it is not a mystery. In one of his lecture category of story.
So yeah, he's paraphrasing, and this is what pisses me off. If you're going to quote someone, quote them. Copy and paste, easy peasy, right? Nope, can't do that. Got to invent words, make it simple for your audience. Like just copy and paste. Take a screenshot of the goddamn blog. It's not that hard. Anyway, rant over.
Yeah.
Stories that puts less emphasis on detection and more emphasis on the battle between the criminal and the lawman. In the crime genre, we follow both characters. It isn't a mystery to the audience who committed the crime, even though it is sometimes a mystery for the detective. Crime stories have a much more fluid structure than detective stories, but we can still identify some similarities. For instance, in a lot of crime stories, we're introduced to a character who is innocent at the beginning. Then, at the break into Act 2, they commit a crime which makes them extremely wealthy or powerful, as Truby puts it. Throughout Act 2, the detective tries to catch the criminal and the criminal tries to escape. Until, at the break into Act 3, the criminal makes a critical mistake, and for the rest of Act 3, things continue to fall apart for the criminal.
Okay, so what he's trying to do is say, well, there's 5 beats to the crime story. Or there's just like the mystery story is also 5 beats. It's like I could break it down into 7 beats if you really want to be talking about looking at evidence and then interviewing people. I don't know what the evasion means in a crime story. You can say the entire story of The Usual Suspects is one giant evasion story. So,
Or the Italian Job.
Italian Job. Oh, that's great. That's a really cool action story too. That's so Skaven. And SJW wrote that alien equals black women, predator equals black men. How is this possible? Yeah, I read that article. It's kind of
Get Bellin argues that like Alien is an example of like monstrous reproduction being demonized in film. I wish I were joking.
Yeah, this is referring to that book you got from.
Yeah, the book is so bad. It's one of the worst books I've ever read in my life.
And that's from a critic.
He is an English associate professor of English at LaRoche College in Pittsburgh.
Oh dear. Come on. What are we teaching your academics?
Apparently how to be crazy.
Let's interpret a movie in the most ridiculous way possible because I like women.
Yeah.
I don't know why they do this.
Yeah, or like how Nedry's death in Jurassic Park is a weird parody of a teenage boy's wet dream / worst nightmare when he meets his end at the hands and mouth of a koi-frilly creature that turns into a horror in the front seat of a car parked on a lover's lane. A lover's lane outlook.
I think he made the same analogy with Jurassic Park. Yeah. Oh god.
Yeah. That's the same. Yeah, that's him. Same guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not very he's trying to be really smart, but he's just word salad stuff.
Yeah, no, this is when you have a bias of any sort and you're trying to fit it into what you perceive, and you have, look at the evidence. See, we're being objective. You could point to the stuff on the screen. It's like, yes. And then you're interpreting it as something completely different. So these people are crazy and we make fun of them. That's pretty much all it comes down to. Anyway, JustWrite is a different kind of interpretive person. So
Yeah.
he's going through whatever this 5-beat structure of every crime mystery is all about.
At the end, the criminal gets away with it, is arrested, or dies. Okay, so now that we've got our building blocks for each genre, let's take a look at how Knives Out weaves them together. Right off the bat, we start with the death of Harlan, so we take a moment that is usually saved for the break into Act 2 and move it to the start. Then for the duration of Act 1, we do what usually takes 2 acts for a detective story to accomplish. The authorities interrogate the various suspects, but then Johnson uses those interrogations as a reason to motivate flashbacks to the character introductions, which was the party that happened the night before the murder.
Which is a problem because there are way too many characters.
Yes, you can't just suddenly stop the investigation. You have to keep going. So if he's saying the genre shifts, that means that like what happens to the investigation?
Also, like EFAB have already brought this up, but a major problem with this movie is the fact that the cops are idiots. They are really stupid. They have not done like basic look into the like the leftover bag that has medical supplies that is just sitting there that the antagonist uses to steals away and to try and make sure that like he doesn't get caught. And it's so dumb. And like, haven't they already done a toxicology report and released it publicly? It's just like, nope. There's no evidence that there was morphine because apparently, like, that's the initial setup is like he thinks that, so for whatever reason, oh man, this is so dumb. Like, I have to break this down. Basically, what happens is his nurse injects a vial into him, but because the labels were switched, she thinks that it's morphine. And she accidentally inserted 100 milligrams of morphine into this guy, this old dude. And this is dumb, made even worse by the end twist, which says that, okay, the vials were switched, but she was able to tell because she was in a hurry and dropped them, she grabbed one of the vials, and it ended up being the right vial because she was able to just tell because of the viscosity of the liquid in the vial.
Okay.
I wish I were making this up. But it's just like, okay, Ryan, and you're saying that you did it because you are a good nurse. Because you are like, you're able to tell that this was not that the thing in that the penicillin was not the morphine just by the viscosity and not taking a look at the vials.
That's the twist at the end. Fantastic. That's
Yes.
brilliant. Something a toxicology report would have told us.
Yes, and that's the major plot point of like the second act is trying to get their hands on this toxicology report. The problem is the toxicology report shows that nope, it's just penicillin. There is no morphine in this man's system, and he just cut his throat because he thought he was overdosed with morphine, so that Marta would not lose her inheritance because of the Slayer clause.
There's plenty of stories, even in the Golden Age with Agatha Christie and other British authors who did these sort of things, who talk about drugs. Agatha Christie was a pharmacist, or at least worked in a pharmacy, so she knew a lot about drugs. There's usually a trip down to the mortuary or the morgue. So these sorts of physical pieces of evidence become evident, and it's becomes clear very early on. So if you don't have the empirical side of a criminal investigation, you are really screwing over your audience, because you need to have hard facts that are immutable.
And
And
it's
if
a week later. It's a week later that the toxicology report has not been released yet.
That's not unheard of, I guess. In
Maybe it's
certain,
longer. How
it
long
should
is-
take only a few days, because these things don't, like, maybe a DNA test would take about a week or two, but basic stuff like how they were killed, time of death, what were they killed by, that's very quick. It's
Yeah.
the details. It's the details of like what happened and how and etc. That would take a few more days. So I can let a week go by. That's fine. Maybe they're in the country or something, that sort of thing. That's fine. People are far away. It's just not getting the data to the audience in a good time, which pisses me off. Because why are you wasting my time? I have no solid backing to think of how this could have happened. That's why waste my time with speculation unless I have something hard to work with. So
Holy cow! Its budget was $40 million and it made $300 million.
wow, that's a pretty good return there, Ryan.
Yeah. He'll never stop.
Yeah.
Probably because like he knows how to make cheap movies.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
maybe not Star Wars, but yeah.
Yeah. They are not going to get him back on. Like Disney is way too reactionary. Like look at Rise of Skywalker. They are like distancing themselves hardcore from Ryan's
I
vision.
want to know how much money he spent on Episode 8. I really do.
Yeah. It was a lot. Like
I remember in the behind the scenes, they said that they blew half their budget before, like, they even started realizing, oh shit, we should actually start maybe being a bit more tactful about where we're spending our money.
also a really big flaw in Knives Out is the main character Marta cannot tell a lie without vomiting. And that's like, and she was the person who she thinks that she administered 100 milligrams of morphine to the guy, and like surely she goes through the symptoms of it, and surely, and like she is there, and then they have this whole dumb song and dance where she like has to make it look like she wasn't there, or at least like she wasn't there like at the moment that Harlan died. And then like in order to protect Marta, Christopher Plummer or Harlan slits his own throat to make sure that she gets all of the money instead of his kids.
Oh my. Okay. Why not just write a will there, buddy? Holy jeez.
Oh, like he has deliberately like told at least one of his grandkids that he is going to cut him out of the will, and like he is going to give everything in his money, everything, all of his fortune, his house, his publishing company, everything to his nurse.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty brutal plot for a murder. It's actually very common to have wills involved in a lot of these murder stories, but it's not blatant beforehand. It's always after the fact, or it's a hidden will, or no one knows who the lawyer is, and it takes time to get to it. And it's always next of kin, and it ends up being the murderer or something. It's always some obscure reference that no one knew, and Poirot has to figure it out, or whomever. So that's common. That's common. Yeah.
Yeah, they reveal the will like midway through, and just like, oh look, they have it's been revealed. It is Marta, and they all think like, dang, was Marta sleeping with Harlan to get all this money? Because like we're getting nothing, and like, which is strange because most of these people are like actually rich in their own right. It's just people like there's some that are embezzling, one that's cheating, and then just one that's just like he's a guy who like has an allowance or something to go to college. And there's this really stupid little boy that's like he's an alt-right Nazi troll. He's apparently masturbates to pictures of dead deer or something.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. That's great.
Yeah.
Also,
and then they
can I
have like
just point out what are we supposed to be looking at on the screen right now?
Okay, what he's doing is taking his supposed story beats from the crime genre and the murder mystery genre. So the top is the murder mystery, the bottom is the crime, and he's saying that Rian Johnson's going to do this switcheroo where he borrows from both and then
And
switches
what's
back.
with the lines and the zeros?
Those are just
plot point, I think.
yeah, it's just a plot point of some sort. Just to
Okay.
denote that this
Yeah.
is a big section.
Where-
The crime is an event. The evasion's a
Look
whole
at this
section.
graph.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I understand. Like, so like the lines are the like
Act.
section. Yeah, the
Yeah.
sections, and then you have the plot point act break in between. In with the
Pretty much.
zeros.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all it is. It's pretty straightforward. I don't like it, but you can break down and categorize a
There are
story.
a lot more efficient ways to visualize this.
That's you know what he's using his own understanding. I'm not going to knock it. I would do a different way as well if I saw the film, of course. But whatever. He's trying to make an argument that Johnson is combining these things. And I'm
It
like,
doesn't even like things about when you're doing like visual representations. They're supposed to be effective visual representations.
Well, the idea that you're actually switching genres is just wrong. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So you either have genres and you mesh them together. You don't switch. That's like going from, Star Wars is half hour is action, and then the next half hour is romance. The next half hour is
Yeah, they intertwine romance in there. They don't
Yeah.
just switch between
it should be connected. Everything is connected in this sort of lattice, not cut, and then you jump to another scene, which is pure romance for 10 minutes, and then boom.
You know,
Yeah.
now I just imagine you like the Office meme where you just cover this board, everything's connected.
Oh God, yeah.
The plot's connected.
Yeah. Here's Punished Berserker again. Thank you, sir. Most people do not know what a toxicology report is. Joe Tardak. Is that the argument when you don't know something? Most people don't know what X is. Like,
Or most people don't know what a Y wing is.
No one knows what a Y wing is. That'd be
Yeah.
fucking stupid. No one
So-
knows what a Y wing is.
Nobody knows what a Y wing is, and so and the only reason why you would include it is having a certain knowledge of the lore.
which is what a writer should have from the get-go. But yeah,
Also, Y wing are not some obscure weird thing from the EU, like the Eternal Fleet in SWOTOR, or some weird super weapon that's in the EU. They are literally in the first Star Wars movie. It's just like watching
They get a lot of focus
6
as well. Like they're the first things to go into the trench run.
they
Yeah,
could have
it's like-
used a series of X-wings to do a bomb or two each or whatever, and it would be the same. Like it's a hard thing to pull off. It's just more believable. There's a series of things they could have done, as opposed to invent a new stupid ship.
The thing doesn't even have shields apparently, so couldn't you just fire a proton torpedo into the bridge? Go pew.
There's lots of ways to improve that movie. We know there's lots.
No, but the thing doesn't even have shields, and it's all plot.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
well, we
just
need to
Skaven.
blow up
He-
the ship. It doesn't have any shields. Kaboom!
Can't keep getting away with this. Well, he's free to make any movies he likes, and apparently he's making a sequel. So, bravo, Rian Johnson. You're doing your job.
You're just committing the same sins over and over again.
Well, until I watch the film, I won't say anything. But if this is what JustWrite's trying to argue, I'm like, oh dear, why are you trying to defend this man?
Yeah.
Anyway,
The party could have been Act 1 of this movie, but by putting it in the past, Johnson gets us through all of this in 30 minutes. Marta's flashback is the whole first act of a crime movie. She starts out innocent, accidentally commits a crime, and then takes steps to hide it. Act 2 of Knives Out matches up perfectly with Act 2
Oh,
of
okay, I
Crime
see what
Movie.
he's doing now.
Cut back and forth between Marta and Blanc as she tries to conceal the crime. Act 2 ends with the way a crime movie ends, with Blanc catching Marta. But then the movie pivots into the ending of a detective story. Blanc has his epiphany when he realizes that Marta is innocent and then delivers a classic Sherlock-esque explanation of the crime.
I would love to watch the ending.
This exact same story.
I would love to watch the ending with Smud, just to kind of like because like you're a big murder mystery fan. I imagine that you would have a conniption fit because of like how dumb the reveal is at the end.
I'll eventually watch it. I know we have other movie nights to go through, and this has never come up, but eventually I'll just watch it myself, I guess. And
It is free on Amazon, so you don't need to pay anything for it.
really,
Or if you're paying for Amazon Prime, then it's free. It's free quotation marks.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you to watch. That's how
Yeah.
I watched it. I didn't.
I
pay
could watch it on Amazon Prime. I could, but I don't really want. I have it,
Yeah.
but why would I watch it? Just
Yeah.
why would I do that? Why do any of that?
Yeah, I prefer to watch stuff like Good Omens, and I'm thinking about getting into Man in the High Tower, but
yes, good idea. One of the few Philip K. Dicks out there you got to watch.
I am excited for Wheel of Time when that comes out.
I know, you bet you bottom dollar you are, sir.
Yes, I am.
Wheel of Time, let's do it. Anything. Movie,
Yes.
show, stage production, let's see it.
Not a stage production, no. Oh, hello, Liddy D.
Hey, LiteratureDevil. Hercule Poirot or Sherlock? I don't know what the question is reference to, but probably
who's your
probably
preference?
Poirot, just because that's what I've enjoyed more, just because they're more intricate, and that's what the video we're talking about Rian Johnson's Knives Out is more referential to, I would imagine. But according to JustWrite, the ending was Sherlock Holmesian, which I'm not sure what exactly that means, because Sherlock Holmes sometimes doesn't solve a case or just hands it over to the authorities. That's that. He doesn't take the accolades. He doesn't care. After he solved it, he doesn't care. Whereas Poirot, he has to make a big show about it. So I imagine this character right here is very much more like Poirot than he is like Sherlock. Anyway,
Story could have been told entirely as a straight detective story from Blanc's perspective, but I think that would have been a weaker film for a bunch of reasons.
it's a weaker film because it didn't follow the proper formula. Okay.
Oh man.
It subverted my understanding of formula. Okay, that's great. That's fantastic.
Firstly, by convincing us we know the crime, a large portion of the audience stops trying to guess who the culprit is and instead settles in and just enjoys the movie. Secondly, it freshens up.
You enjoy the movie better. It's more entertaining if you just take away all the elements of the middle of the movie that make it a detective story. That's great.
Or like you just like say, oh, okay, why should I like? I guess like you could do something like that where you kind of think, oh, okay, I figured it out.
The reason, the reason why you do that, the reason why you have that detective part is that's the whole point that allows you to figure out who done it. Once you take that out, there's no point. You can't make deductions. You can't make guesses. That's not helping the audience. That would just piss me off. I'm like, why am I watching this? This is not a detective story. It sounds like a bad movie. Or a bad detective movie, at least.
The stale story structure of a detective film and makes the movie extremely rewatchable. Not to generalize too much, but I'm usually not too interested in watching detective stories more than twice, maybe. But Knives Out...
Okay, so his preferences, I don't like watching or reading a book more than twice. It's like, that's your preference, buddy. But when you read a really well done, like a complicated Agatha Christie story, I think Evil Under the Sun or what have you, where you have to follow every single scene and get what's going on and who said what, then you want to reread them because they're so intricate. There's like 15 pieces of evidence. There's 7 criminals. They all have a plot. It's like, oh my God, that's cool. Yeah, there's all sorts of red herrings. There are all sorts of really cool elements. And to me, it sounds like not only JustWrite, but Rian Johnson thinks that's too much work. That's too much effort for the audience to do. Which is, it's like kind of like making a puzzle and saying, I don't want to be bothered with filling in all the blanks after I finish the outline, all the border pieces. Oh, I did the border pieces. Let someone else wait and do the middle part, and I'll come in and do the last few pieces or whatever. That's not why you do a puzzle. That's not why you watch any sort of murder mystery. So, Knives Out is more entertaining if you're a mouth breathing smooth. You know what? I don't know. It just sounds stupid. Like,
Yeah, even as he is pitching this movie, he is making it sound worse.
yeah, I thought I was going to see it eventually this year. I'm like, I'm not too interested. Now it's like I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't even sound like a murder mystery.
Yeah, well, yeah, like you kind of know, like it's basically just like Rian Johnson doing his gotcha thing, where you add the initial murder mystery, then you have the reveal from Marta's perspective, like, oh, this is what happened. Harlan killed himself because he thought that he was poisoned with morphine, so that she would not get tossed, get fired / lose her inheritance, and have her mother sent right back to to South America, where she Uruguay, where she's from, I do not remember. She's an illegal immigrant. Let's go with that. And he kills himself with a knife to try and make it so that it looks like he killed himself, and was not poisoned, so that she doesn't have to worry about the Slayer cause. Problem is, he's forgetting that there will be a toxicology report.
Which means the victim is no longer a murderer or murderee. He is, or the murderer. Sorry, the murderee. He is a suicide victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't understand how science works.
Yeah, it's very confusing. And then, like, it turns out, oh, gotcha! He wasn't dosed with morphine, it was penicillin, because the nurse could tell the viscosity just by holding the medication.
I didn't know you injected penicillin. I thought it was
Maybe it's like it's some kind of like.
I think it's
like,
optional to like. I think you can inject penicillin. I think.
huh.
It's like. Let me see.
I'm pretty sure you can inject it.
Yeah, I just don't know the actual technique of doing it.
I can't remember if it is penicillin. It might be a different drug, but it was an innocuous drug, and she just thought that it was.
Yeah, you can definitely inject penicillin.
Okay, cool. I've never had, maybe when I was a baby or something, I might have gotten penicillin, but I can't recall ever having it or having anyone else who needed it. It's been a while. Anyway.
But it's just so consistently fun that I could watch it 100 times. Mysteries.
I would love to see you go through a marathon of 100 times of this film because it's so fun because it switches genres. What a dumb, like, come on.
It's like, I mostly would like I would watch it in order to get an understanding. But the problem is, the more I think about it, and the more I like listen to like people like Mahler and you guys like talk about it, it's just like all of these problems just keep coming up, and it's just like not even like nitpick problems. It's just like, no, these are basic structural problems, and they're everywhere in Ryan's work because Ryan just does not like smooth out his stuff. He doesn't edit himself.
I love The Princess Bride. It's one of my favorite movies. I've never seen it 50 times. I've never seen it probably 40, maybe 20 times in my life.
I've seen Lord of the Rings like maybe like 7 times in my lifetime, but I wouldn't watch it like 100 times or over and over again.
So
I'd have to space it out.
I hope he's exaggerating, because that's like, dude, are you gonna live to be 100 and watch it once a year? Like, what are you doing? Like, what?
I guess maybe he's just using hyperbole to show that, like, I love this movie. I love Rian Johnson.
Yeah, it can't be that good. Maybe it's good. It can't be that good. Okay.
Yeah,
the 100 times.
I'm
on number 74. Oh.
Oh, like, I guess like I could just read the Wikipedia synopsis to you guys and just like, this is what happened. This mechanically is what happens. Yeah. And it's just like, okay.
So here's That's So Skaven. I like the flashy lights. I don't know, man. If it was really good production value.
The acting's great. The acting is really, really good. And there's some funny lines here and there, but the political commentary is really obvious.
I think most of the acting in murder mysteries are great just because they get really good actors And with murder mysteries, everything's very focused. You know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're supposed to act. There's no real room for interpretation. Like when you read an Agatha Christie novel, you know exactly who these guys are. You know their motive. You know the stereotype they are. Like everything's clear. So the actors don't have to like make stuff up, like with Sean Connery or any of those other actors in the original Murder on the Orient Express. Like you get it. This is the countess. This is the maid. This is the servant. Like they're all like, yep, we get it. We know their class. We know where they come from. We know their language. It's very clear because when you write murder mysteries, when you write good murder mysteries, everything needs to be clear, especially characterization, or else you wouldn't have any idea to figure out motive or opportunity or means or method. It just wouldn't be there. How can a tall man operate this object because he's too tall to fit into it or whatever? Like everything has to be spelled out to a degree. So anyway, that's why I think audiences or at least the actors know what they're doing very well.
Be solved once, but Knives Out offers more than just a puzzle. And that's because, thirdly, having two perspective characters in a detective movie just opens up so much opportunity for comedy. We're led to
Okay, so you can have multiple narrators or perspectives in detective fiction. That's totally fine. You could have the gumshoe, like you have Archie Goodwin, and you have Nero Wolfe, so they kind of play off each other. Same with Sherlock and Holmes. Like this is very common. By itself does not lend itself to comedy.
I just noticed something. He said that like I don't like logic puzzles. That smells like something he said to Mahler and Wolf.
Where did he say it in this video?
Yes.
Let me rewind that. I want to hear that.
Well, he said like it has more to offer than simple puzzle.
Okay.
generalize too much, but I'm usually not too interested in watching detective stories more than twice, maybe. But Knives Out is just so consistently fun that I could watch it 100 times. Mysteries can only be solved once, but Knives Out offers more than just a puzzle. And that's because, thirdly, having two perspective characters in a detective movie just opens up so much opportunity for comedy. We're led.
This sounds to me
Okay,
as
so he rewatches it because of comedy reasons.
yeah, but like almost every popular detective fiction movie or adaptation to a movie involves more than one perspective.
Yeah.
So
And you could have a like crime thing with the perspective of the bad guy in mind.
I guess that's more like Columbo, though.
Or but mostly like this stuff of like white collar and Hannibal and stuff like that is detective stuff where you're in the head of the detective trying to figure out the bad guy with the occasional flicks to him.
Well, in some cases, you have the detective, then you have the actual police force. And in most cases, the police are incapable of handling it. There's lots of crime dramas over the years in North America. What was The Mentalist, where you have the mentalist himself who works with the police, and the police have their angle, and he's trying to fight with them and do his thing. So multiple perspectives are fine. But he says it lends itself to comedy. It's like, well, that's again, that's a whole other thing, which you can do. But comedy is something like, do you want to laugh at the detective? Do you want to laugh at the character? Like, what's the point of like, what are you getting at? Do you want to laugh
Is
at
the
Holmes?
comedy quite like what's in with Star Wars, where it just feels very out of place, or does it feel very in place? Because with Star Wars, at least the sequels, it's very contradictory to the scene it's trying to tell, so it breaks the serious nature. Because when I saw the trailers, I thought Knives Out was supposed to be a parody.
I honestly did too. It does seem like a parody.
That's not you don't make parodies of murder, guys. That's not. I mean, you can, but that would be like Spaceballs or I don't know.
Airplane.
Yeah, like it's totally a farce. It's kind of like you don't do that as well as tell a serious murder mystery. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Actually, a good question in the chat from Madcap Productions. Jordan Peele or Rian Johnson in terms of overrated filmmaker?
You know what? I haven't watched anything by Jordan Peele.
I would say Rian Johnson, because it seems as though the media wants to suck the proverbial sausage of his movies consistently, and they don't critically analyze his movies to take a look at like, oh, this has structural problems. Jordan Peele has only made 2 movies, and like they've got good critical reception. I think that like probably the worst you could say is that they are okay. Like Us and Get Out are okay. Rian Johnson's movies are mostly bad, with Brick being the only exception that I've heard of being like actually good.
Yeah, I would argue Brick is actually watchable and entertaining, and it takes the genre and just pushes it up about 50, 60 years into a contemporary setting, which I thought was cool. The language stays the same. And everyone's drinking milk as opposed to scotch or whatever they would drink in a nightclub. So it's kind of cute in how he adapts that, but that's just an adaptation of tropes to make it the setting more believable, which is great. It's nothing amazing. It's creative. I'll give him that. But the language is just a mess. That there's some scenes by the femme fatale, I can't remember her name, but it's just what? What's going on?
To believe Benoit Blanc is a brilliant detective, but getting to see things from Marta's perspective while he's investigating the crime just constantly undermines the idea that he's some great genius. And it does all that by breaking one of the core rules of the crime genre. As Truby states, in crime stories, you want to make both guys great. Both guys.
What do you mean both guys? What are you talking about? Who's saying
like
this?
It's both the antagonist and the cop and the criminal.
Yeah, but who's saying this?
I think he's saying Truby. Have you said Truby? Let's back it up a little bit. Let's back it up by a couple seconds.
As Truby states, in crime stories, you want to make both guys great, both guys equal. You want to think of a good crime story as a heavyweight fight. We want the best cop and we want the best criminal, which is why they must be equal. If one is much better than the other, fight's over in the second round. We've got to have 2 equal titans so that we can have a 12-round bloodbath. In Knives Out,
Okay, I want to find this. Let me do a quick search on my ice cream reader here. Both guys great. No, it's not in his book. It's not on that page I showed you before. Let me do a quick Google search. Make both guys great. John Truby.
Ari Aster. From what I understand of Mr. Ari Aster, he kind of has the mentality of a teenage boy trying to be edgy. That's what I understand.
Rian Johnson as a person? Like, what do you mean?
Ari Aster. He did Hereditary and Midsommar. I haven't heard much that is like really good about it. It seems as though like both sides of the aisle said Midsommar was crap.
Really?
School of Movies hated it, and Critical Drinker also hated it, but they hated it for very different reasons.
I would have to reference exactly what they're referring to.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't find this. I'm not going to waste any more time.
JustWrite just pulling crap out of his bottomless anus.
I mean, when you think about it, you want your antagonist to be bigger and better than your protagonist in general. When you're talking about detective fiction, it could be the most mundane murder with the most mundane murderer. That's fine. They don't have to be great.
Yeah.
You could have a good crime story just because it's an interesting plot or an interesting mystery. That's it. Mm-hmm. The criminal doesn't have to be a mastermind. In fact, the only mention of Moriarty happens twice, maybe a third time in a book after the events of Reichenbach Falls, where it's just a reference to the fact that he was fighting him and came back. So in all of the canon of Sherlock, there's only 2 stories really. One where he's introduced, and the second one is the Reichenbach Falls episode. But he's not some super duper genius. He's just really good at math and organization, and it ends up being Sherlock smarter. because he's Sherlock. So Sherlock is always smarter than everyone else, except his brother. So they don't have to be super geniuses. So no, murder mysteries are done by anyone. The murderer can be anyone, and they think they're clever, and they are, but Poirot is always smarter. Sherlock is always smarter. Nero Wolfe is always smarter. He is like the go-to armchair detective in American novels or American creative crime fiction. Yeah, I don't know. This is. I want to see this quote from Truby. Maybe he's not aware of all the authors. Yes, it does make it more interesting if they're equals, but that's not classically the case. So.
In Knives Out, Marta and Blanc are equally matched in that they are equally fallible. Marta is not.
I don't think they're equally matched. Just from looking at, Marta being a nurse who can't lie, and Blanc being this genius detective, whatever. So no.
Yeah.
B.B. Sherlock is nothing compared to Doyle's Holmes. I'm trying to think about that. That's two different characters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very different. One is somebody who he claims he's a sociopath, but he seems like somebody more on like the autism spectrum. Which, like, yeah, I guess Sherlock Holmes is Sherlock Holmes is like a very like just goal-oriented, focused person, and BBC Sherlock wants to be entertained. They're very different.
I would say he's a gentleman detective who's very analytical and only cares about not being bored. So he's shooting himself full of morphine. He's playing the violin. He doesn't associate with women too much. He doesn't care to to flirt. He just does it if he gets to a goal. And I think that's what the writers of the BBC version of Sherlock took and say, okay, well, maybe he's a social, maybe he doesn't care. And they delved into that aspect of his psychology. Whereas in the books, he's like, no, I see myself as a brain and everything else is an appendage, or an appendix rather. Like he doesn't care about anything, any other element of his life except his mind. So you could say he's egotistical. He certainly doesn't care for a lot of things, human formalities, but he's always kind and nice. He's always kind to the Baker Street irregulars. He's always nice to the common man. He goes undercover and covers himself with dirt and shit and all that stuff to fit in. So he takes his job very seriously. So I don't think he's anything like the BBC version, but that's because they try to humanize Sherlock as a functioning sociopath, which is fine, but it doesn't quite work very well. It does work. It does work to the first season, I would say, but after that, it sort of loses its focus, and they focus too much on John and his relationship with Mary and all this other stuff you don't need in a good story with crime.
Not a criminal mastermind, and Benoit Blanc is not Hercule Poirot. It's like watching a heavyweight fight where both boxers are missing every punch.
That sounds like a bad heavyweight fight. How is that a good film? What I really want to watch Evander Holyfield fight, I don't know, Mike Tyson in his prime when they're all missing, they're all ducking and dodging. I'd be like, what's going on? Nothing. Or no, that would be Holyfield just dodging everything. That's the problem with Holyfield fights. You guys ever watch boxing? He is so defensive. He just outlasts the other competitor and gets a few jabs in there that the guy gets so tired. Like that's his strategy every time. So, yeah, very exciting boxing.
Much of a detective, are you?
Well, to be fair, you make a pretty lousy murderer.
I've seen movies use the aesthetics of one genre while following the story structure of another. I've seen movies start with the
those are two different things. You could have detective fiction in the future. You could have it in steampunk. You could have it in all sorts of things. That's fine. How does that even relate to what you're talking about? Of switching genres, not stylistically, not visually, but actual genres.
tone of one genre and then switch into the tone of another. Knives Out is the
Tone
only...
is very different. You can switch tone. Tone is not indicative of one entire genre. You could have a dark, moody atmosphere and have a bright one the next. You could say, well, the bright, happy feeling is from children's stories. Like, yeah, and children's stories can also be dark.
Yeah,
So tone
generally,
is very, very subjective.
also tone varies from scene to scene, not just genre to genre.
Yeah, I know. It's I don't know what he's getting at here. It just kind of maybe he's making a commentary on Rian Johnson again. Who knows?
Movie I can think of that starts following the story structure of one genre, pivots into another, and then back.
That's it?
In my next video, I'm going to take a look at some of the movies that inspired Knives Out, which includes some Agatha Christie classics like Murder on the
Oh, that's the one I already did on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, that was really weak.
Yeah, like I said, short. He doesn't make that many bad things. He doesn't have that many bad things to say, but it's not as rambly as his Rise of Skywalker 24-minute review.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we covered that in like almost exactly an hour.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, JustWrite is either losing his touch or I don't know. Was he
He's-
always this way?
I don't know. Like, I think he's definitely like lost his touch since he did his Hobbit videos. Like the Hobbit videos, like I would actually say like those are some legit critiques of the Hobbit movies. I'd have to rewatch them again, but I remember that like even like Wolf and Mahler were like, these are actually good videos, and it's just shocking that he's like shifted, and like all the Hobbit has way less problems than the Last Jedi, and yet for whatever reason, Mr. Wright loves the Last Jedi and hates the Hobbit movies, and he even like regrets making the Hobbit movies, the Hobbit videos, because he said if I made a thing that made somebody hate those movies, then that sucks.
So the core element of this video that I got was that this video or this movie switches genres from a generic crime. Sorry, it starts at a murder mystery, switches to a generic crime story where the whole investigation is thrown out the door, I guess. And then it goes back to the denouement where the detective answers all the questions and solves the case. That to me doesn't sound like a very good detective fiction story. You're missing the meat of the whole. You're missing the whole point of the mystery, which is you get to figure out who done it before you get there, which is the fun part. With JustWrite, that's not fun. He finds crime stories more fun, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like Madcap Production actually a good point. Like, why does TLJ get a pass and yet the Hobbit trilogy is so sacrilegious? I don't know.
Thing is, the Hobbit isn't even as bad as like the
A lot
Last
of people
Jedi.
say. Yeah, like
No, I think there's a lot of criticisms you can put towards it, and I think that's perfectly fine and a lot of them. But there's nowhere near as bad as TLJ. It's nowhere near as law breaking. It's nowhere near as misunderstanding the universe.
spirit of it.
That's it.
Yeah. You have it's basically kind of I think basically the oh yeah, that's actually pretty true. Like he wanted to evolve past the angry YouTuber, but to adapt to the mind of an artful critic, which is why to him The Last Jedi is good. Okay, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I would definitely agree that there are lots and lots of problems. I would agree that there are a lot of problems with the Hobbit movies, but The Last Jedi is kind of in a class all of its own in terms of how like poorly constructed and poorly considered the plot structure is.
I just don't like this technique of using the gotcha or a plot twist or a reveal as useful for a dramatic element, let alone a plot element. It's like, okay, yeah, give us any gotcha moment from The Last Jedi. It's like, oh, great. Now Snoke is dead. That doesn't help the mysteries of Ray being a Mary Sue. I guess she is a Mary Sue. Okay, I guess that was the point then. She's an invincible woman. Fantastic. It's just all these questions that cause these things just because you want to shock the audience is not worth it, to my opinion. And maybe you do one or two, not 5 or 6. It just does not work. So if you're telling me, imagine, I don't know, The Last Jedi had a genre shift from Star Wars experience to romance, you'd be like, oh God, why? Or like half the film would just be Raylo, and you're like, ooh.
Ooh.
And it goes back to Star Wars film. You're like, okay, that was enough of that. Anyway, that was just right, folks. That was short and sweet. I'm glad it didn't take that long. Now it makes me even less wanting to watch that film. So
Yeah, JustWrite is not a good pitch artist.
yeah, he's like, hey, let's look at this amazing thing that Rian Johnson does in destroying the genre of murder mystery. Like, oh, that's not good. I'm going to watch it hundreds of times. Like, okay, have fun.
Yeah, JustWrite, like, we're sorry, but you cannot articulate your points very well.
I don't mind what he tried to do with, looking at subgenre. If you even classify murder mysteries as a subgenre of crime fiction, they're really synonyms, and you have to really be specific of the instance of murder mystery or style before you say it's a genre or subgenre. So people, when they say, "Oh, it's a crime story," it's like it's the same thing as a murder mystery. In most basic parlance, you're going to say the same thing to someone who doesn't know the genres or the subgenres. Like noir happens to be a subgenre of hard-boiled, but not too many people know what hard-boiled is. So hard-boiled can lend itself to noir, and they usually are very similar anyway. So anyway, I think that was enough for us tonight, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Just upload very quickly. I just released it was kind of an experiment. I ranted and I was playing around with a couple of things. It's a video about Star Trek, just kind of talking 5 minutes, me just talking about the problems with new Star Trek of what's been happening these days. So if you find that interesting, just check it out. My channel, links in the description.
Cool. All right, good stuff. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Any other suggestions, leave them in the suggestions section of the Discord. We are slowly going through them all, and we have to start another list because the voting is getting so big that it's getting over 2,000 character limit. Maybe you have to refactor all the sentences so we can read them all properly and all succinctly. But oh boy, so many suggestions. A lot of them are big, like half hours. Like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
we're gonna be here for hours, guys.
Yeah, or like JustWrite's Ready Player One video, which isn't. It's like this for a longer period of time, but it's like Ready Player One has a lot of bad themes. Also, he gets a lot of stuff factually wrong.
That sounds about right for JustWrite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even just like he gets the references, he thinks he kind of reads sexism into some of the innocuous references.
Really?
Like he says, like when a joke is made about the comments. The only reason why I know this is because the comment section called him out multiple times. Like he said, like the holy hand grenade of Antioch is this like a reference to how religion is weaponized or something?
What? Are you serious? He doesn't do Monty Python?
Well, I think maybe he just mixed it up because he also said like, what about it said like the look at the how here's about the like when somebody says like you look really kind of dumb with that hello about what that's that thing about Mary hairdo, and he thinks like, well, that's really sexist because like Mary All About Mary is a chick show and it's not for guys like Batman, and it's like, that's a reference to a semen joke in a really crass, dirty sitcom. And he just interprets it as just like, oh, it's kind of like it's the film making a pop at faggotry or whatever they think it is. Is or just like men being effeminate or whatever. And it's just like, no, it's a gross out joke. It's a reference to a gross out joke because the guy has silver hair.
Okay, well that's great. Thanks for that information, Dunn.
You're welcome.
Anyway, we're doing voting again either tonight or tomorrow if we have time. Tomorrow I'll be busy with EFAP. I don't know when though. We could have a Smudcast tomorrow if there's enough time, but I don't know. If not, we'll try for Sunday unless we're doing movie nights. I don't know what's happening, Shiny. So we'll find
don't
out.
look at me.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know if we're doing anything else with LiteratureDevil. I don't know what we're doing, but we'll find out.
We can work out something.
Okay, so we'll find out Sunday at the latest. Okay, great. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.